Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Hello.
All right, so we're going to be talking about something small, but could carry something large in risk. And it's a topic we have sort of, broadly talked about before, but I think we need to dig into it a little bit more.
Yeah, there's no question we need to drill down on this because it's a very common source of misuse. And that's probably the best way of putting it.
And what is that, Doc? What are we talking about? We teased it. What are we talking about?
Yeah. It's the AT modifier appended to your CMT code for Medicare.
Now, before you stop the podcast, change the channel and say, this is boring. It won't be, I promise, because we're going to talk about why it is that you should know a little bit more about this if you don't. Okay?
It's critical. We always say this, and it's not a joke, it's the truth. When you're dealing with carriers, you can have a debate, you can have a discussion, you can have a difference of opinion. But when you're dealing with Medicare, you're dealing with the feds. Don't mess with the feds.
Right. And the thing that always pops into my mind right away is when we get asked by a member or a staff person at a member office, what's the modifier I have to use from Medicare to get paid?
Oh,
and it doesn't matter if it's AT or any modifier. When you're asking about what's the modifier to get us paid, it sort of demonstrates that you need to have more of an understanding of why you would use that modifier, and also understand that you're using modifiers to report what occurred, not the other way around.
Yeah. The question should be more like, how should I bill Medicare legitimately? What modifier helps me bill Medicare legitimately?
Yeah.
Yeah. A real representation of the service. You need to have.
How about, if I were to use this, what modifier is it? And if I were to use it, what does that actually mean was performed?
Right.
It all goes back to what nobody likes to deal with, which is documentation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And AT is so funny. Over the years, it sort of morphs into everybody's opinion about what AT stands for. And some will say, oh, it's acute treatment because they want it to be acute treatment, or it's active treatment. So Medicare defines it as active treatment. It is what they call active treatment. They do have a definition called acute subluxation, but AT stands for active treatment.
But by strict modifier definition in CPT, it does define AT as acute treatment. That is the proper definition. But Medicare expounds on the use of AT to say, yes, acute is part of that, but it really is active treatment. So when you're dealing with Medicare, AT goes beyond just the word acute to active.
Yeah, you can see why there's so much confusion out there, because one says one thing and the other says another. So
it should, I hope, doctors bring up the question of what does this actually mean as far as care rendered? Like, what are we talking about? Active, acute?
Well, it's really kind of simple in my mind. Medicare, a lot of people badmouth Medicare, hate Medicare, say nasty things about Medicare. But the truth is, nobody defines anything more clearly than Medicare. Now, I'm not saying it's not confusing and convoluted or whatever.
Hold on. You're going to try to convince me that Medicare is something that I want to, deal with?
Yeah, because it's the only one that defines things very clearly. They actually even use the word subluxation. Oh, my God. They use terms like, chiropractic adjustment, manipulative therapy or whatever, but they use the right terms. But when it comes to Medicare, really, there's only two categories that they treat: active subluxations and chronic subluxations. That's it. Those are the two. Nothing else. If it doesn't fit under an active subluxation definition or a chronic subluxation definition, then you should not be using it should not be expecting payment for treatment.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Doc, is if a Medicare patient comes in and they're in pain, that's all I need. That justifies the whole world of care, doesn't it?
No. See,
what do you
but
mean no?
no, this is so odd that Medicare will literally state pain's not a reason to alone is not a reason to treat a patient for reimbursement. So forget it. What we say, forget about it, right? Because there's
Mhm.
no way that a senior person is not going to have some kind of pain chronically. It's just the way it is. 99.9% of the people out there over a certain age will have something that they complain about.
Oh, really,
So,
doc? Why don't you tell me all about it?
well, we don't have enough time on this
Yeah.
podcast,
I
but
mean, your personal experiences for some reason.
personal, very much. All of
Yeah.
a sudden you hit a certain age. Wait a minute. What's the most common after a poll, the most common age where someone considers you old?
Good
Not
question.
Medicare.
I don't know.
Medicare says 65, right?
Yeah.
You
50?
qualify.
Is it 50?
69.
Oh.
The country, the greater percentage of the population considers you old at 69.
Oh,
I
well,
don't
I'm
know what they
young
call 'em.
then. Great.
You're young, yeah, yeah, and I'm
A
just
spring
barely
chicken,
old.
spry. I am
I'm
green. I
just
don't know
yeah.
anything. It's perfect.
But, when you read the definitions of chronic and acute subluxation, and then they also have a third definition, which is maintenance, but when you read them, they're very, very clear about what they mean, especially when you read the chronic subluxation. So acute subluxation, generally, they to refine it down, you have to demonstrate an improvement in or an arrest of progression of the patient's condition, which is a subluxation. So it has to be improved and you have to stop it. But when you read the chronic subluxation definition, it actually clarifies it further. It says a patient's condition is considered chronic when it is not expected to significantly improve or be resolved with further treatment, as is the case with an acute condition. So
Now
they
hold on,
then,
doc, because now I'm starting to get confused because I thought that would be maintenance.
no, it says the continued therapy can be expected to result in some functional improvement
Uh,
once the clinical status has remained stable for a given condition without the expectation of additional objective clinical improvements. Further manipulative treatment is considered maintenance therapy and is not covered.
all right, listening as a layperson, listening to that gobbledygook doctor stuff that you just said, I picked out a few words.
Mm.
Functional, right? That was one word that
Right,
I picked out.
right,
Functional and improvement.
right.
So,
How do you do that?
right, how does one do
How is
that?
one function? So, what is it that we have that actually we use to document and demonstrate functional improvement? Well, we have our exams, of course, but now from the patient's perspective, what do we have?
I'd imagine it's those wonderful outcome assessment tools, right?
Exactly. So, why does Medicare require you to do them every 30 days or
Yeah.
less?
Oh,
Because
it's
they
not just
want
breakfast, right?
no, it's not just breakfast. You have to demonstrate functional improvement, not symptom improvement. So it does bring you to a whole different place with Medicare that they're saying, look, we know these people are going to have symptoms forever and always, but will continued care improve how they function? Simple as that. And the outcome assessment tools are pretty clear on that, that all of a sudden you start plateauing, they're not functionally improving. You may be maintaining them, which
Well,
brings
there's
us
always
to
the
the maintenance.
question of what does improvement mean from a score standpoint, depending on the tool you're using.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And as long as you can demonstrate some a standard through a standard outcome assessment tool that the patient is functionally improving, but they're not going to keep improving month after month after month. There is no way, let's just say it right out there, no way that you can put a patient on a monthly schedule and bill under an AT. No way.
But the patient doesn't want to pay for it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. AT doesn't stand for all treatment.
Oh, it doesn't?
Ah,
Oh.
that just
Oh,
popped
my
into my
I have
head.
the wrong book. My book says
Yeah,
something else.
yeah. It does not stand for all treatment. It stands for active acute treatment. So when we look at this and you realize that maintenance, I mean, we always say that we laugh at this, right? When we talk about the maintenance definition.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my God.
please.
Yeah. Maintenance therapy includes services that seek to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life, or maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic condition. When further clinical improvement cannot reasonably be expected from continuous ongoing care, and the chiropractic treatment becomes supportive rather than corrective in nature, Medicare considers the treatment is maintenance therapy. Do not use the AT modifier when you provide maintenance therapy. It's right there. It's right in the manual, right in the book. Yet we
Then
have
what do I
doctors.
use?
Yeah.
Like, what do I use if I'm not using the EAT, I guess is the
Well, I will
question.
defer back to you,
Oh.
Dr. Biller.
Yeah, Doctor Biller, exactly. So, it's funny because oftentimes we'll get the question of what modifier do I use to get paid, right? We started the episode with that. But then the question becomes, well, if I don't use it, what modifier do I use? And then you say, well, the modifier is GA, meaning waiver on file. But then there is a second half to that, which is really the first half of that, which is, are you using the waiver on file, which of course they mean the ABN or the advanced beneficiary
Hmm.
notice, right?
You can only get worse than the 2 letters of AT by using the 3 letters ABN, right?
Yeah.
As far as
Which,
misuse of
yeah,
something. Yeah.
which our members of Tools of Practice know. We go into in detail on our my video to help you understand when to use it in the choreography, when not to use it, what does it actually mean, and you want to make sure you use it correctly because if you are using no modifier at all, guess what Medicare is going to do to your claim? They're not going to pay it. They're not going to allow it, and they're going to say it's a contractual write-off.
So you don't even get paid for it.
You don't get paid, the
You
patient doesn't
can't
get
get
paid.
paid.
Oh,
Nobody gets paid.
what's even funnier is have you ever seen a patient's version of a Medicare EOB? The patient's version of a Medicare EOB, which they get usually quarterly, is these big, huge letters and characters that say, "This is not a bill." And they tell you how much your doctor could bill you for that visit. And when that says $0 because you failed to use the correct modifier on the CMT service or maybe the therapy, right below the amount that you may bill or may be billed, right below that in big, huge font, it says, "If you suspect fraud, call this number." And that's what the patient gets from Medicare.
Yeah, and let's face it, they're gonna call Medicare. Medicare is gonna say you have unlimited chiropractic services for all
No.
medically necessary treatment, and so they're gonna say, "But my chiropractor's telling me I can't get reimbursed for this monthly visit, so, well, somebody's lying to me here." And they
Yeah.
don't follow the definition and hear the whole medically necessary part, and it's medically necessary as defined by CMS, which I just read you, the 3 definitions that they go by. It's as simple as that.
It's
So,
funny because you're right. The patient will call Medicare, get one side of the story, which is, yes, chiropractic's covered. No, there's no limit to your visits, and they should just bill it correctly. But they don't give the other half of the story about maintenance and why not everything's covered. I had one time where the patient, I don't know if the patient connected to the office like in a conference call or if it was the Medicare, you know, uh, representative. But I ended up on the phone with the patient and the Medicare rep telling me this wonderful story about just built the right way. And then I said, well, what about the fact that it's maintenance? They signed an ABN and there's a GA modifier that we're going to be using. And the representative was like, "Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there is that. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing the second half of the story with your member." And, you just have to be careful because if you, as Dr. Davini said, you're seeing the patient once a month, even if you're doing an outcome assessment tool once a month, but you're not documenting that there's a treatment plan in place and that there's functional improvement that's occurring, it's maintenance.
period.
Yeah, I know.
And, there's no argument here that it's very like I say, Medicare is very clear about what they will and will not cover. There's no argument. So stop trying to fight it. And some people will say, "Oh, this is too much for me. I just can't deal with this. I'm not going to do Medicare." Well,
Right.
aside from a whole other discussion that we as a profession cannot opt out of Medicare, which might actually be another podcast at some point. But looking at the states in the country, which state would you think has the most senior members?
Well, again, in my mind, it's gonna be places people retire, like Florida, the
Yeah,
Carolinas, maybe.
yeah. The highest number of Medicare recipients in the US can be found in Maine,
Wow, polar opposite of Florida.
27%. 27%. West Virginia is 26, Vermont is 25, New Hampshire's 24, and Florida and Massachusetts are 22.
Wow.
So you better know where you're going if you think you're getting away from some.
Well,
We have
that's
just
true,
as
right?
many
If you wanna
seniors in.
practice and you don't wanna deal with Medicare, or you wanna minimize how much you deal with Medicare, you better look at the demographics of the city or town that you plan on practicing in, right?
Yeah, yeah. You live in the Cape. Is the Cape more
Uh,
senior participant has more seniors than or less seniors than other parts of the state?
any time of year is definitely more. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You don't move to Cape Cod if you don't want to practice. Have a good portion of your practice anyway. Be senior. Simple
Yeah.
as that.
Boy, is that true.
Yeah. Oh my God. 65 to 74, I guess, is the sweet spot for the greatest number of Medicare recipients that technically are alive. So they're going to be the people you see.
Are you on the top end of that demographic, doc?
Yes. No, approaching the middle. You know?
Oh,
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Statistically, we're good. Won't lose
Yeah.
you anytime
Yeah.
soon. That's good.
There you go. There you go. And a whole other discussion at some point will be advantage plans. But 51% of all people who use Medicare are using advantage
Uh,
plans.
that
So
is
look at
another
that. It's
episode because
shrinking. Oh,
we did a what was it, in-person course on that, didn't we?
we did.
And, even the stuff we were teaching, we were just rolling our eyes at the ridiculousness of
Oh,
Medicare Advantage.
yeah. I can't. That's as close to a police state as you get, I think.
Yeah.
Advantage plans. You think Medicare is bad, right? So, oh my God.
So, the morals of the story, number 1 is anytime you bill any code to Medicare, no matter what that code is, exams, x-rays, re-exams, adjustments, extra spinals, therapies, modalities, uh, unlisted codes, HCPCS codes, I don't care. Every single code you bill to Medicare needs a modifier of some kind. If you ever bill a CPT code to Medicare without any kind of a modifier, you're risking processing that incorrectly. We know with the chiropractic adjustments, either AT or GA. It's one or the other.
It's great you said that because in the older days.
Of course, it's great I said that. Everything I say is
I
great. What are you
know,
talking
but
about?
yeah, well, what can I say? But there used to be management groups that taught you to bill all your Medicare with the AT and GA.
Oh,
So
no.
basically, you're telling Medicare, I'm not sure if it's active treatment or maintenance. So who's going to be the deciding interest there?
Yeah, and actually, there is one MAC in the country that publishes an advisory not to
Yeah,
bill those
you're
2
basically
together.
telling them, I don't know. So
Yeah,
they're going to have to find out, which means send me your records. Why would you
yeah.
do that? It was truly one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard. I don't know if it's active treatment. I don't know if it's maintenance. So I'll let you decide. Well, I don't know about you, but the last person or group I want to send my records to would be CMS.
Well, and if you think about it, it's a clinical decision. Using the AT or GA is a clinical decision based off the published parameters that CMS provides. So, as you say, let's have you, the doctor, make the decision, not CMS and some, auditor make
Oh,
that
we always
decision.
we always say if the patient complains, you look at them and you go, it would literally take an act of Congress to change this, because
Right.
everything about CMS comes through Congress. So take the Medicare definition that I read a little bit earlier, put it on a piece of paper with their senators and representatives' names on it, and tell them, call them and complain because they're the only ones who can change it. I can't. And hopefully it ends the
Yeah.
discussion.
I have to say, like, I probably am repeating myself. I'm getting to be, older, like some people get. But you think chiropractors have it bad? Well, physical therapists, my billing company, we bill for them, and one of them went through an audit, and they go through like an educational sort of audit where when something gets picked up, their first time around, they get the opportunity to get educated by CMS. Interesting. So as part of that, and through that education, the CMS auditor, educator, was reviewing with the PT about their documentation and the outcome assessment tool and the activities of daily living. And one of the ADLs was about climbing a flight of stairs. Or maybe it was 2 flights of stairs. That's a very typical ADL, right? That
Sure.
be able to, climb a couple flights of stairs. And the auditor said, "Well, this patient lives on a first floor home. Why is that ADL in your documentation? It's not relevant." And I was like, "Whoa,
Whoa.
whoa,
Yeah, we don't
all
care that
right,
you can't do more than one flight of stairs. You
yeah,
don't
right,
ever come across more than one flight of stairs in
yeah,
your life.
right." That's what
Oh,
I was thinking that. Then I'm like, "Well, this patient lives on the Cape. There's not a ton of second stories, like businesses and stuff like that too." But wow,
yeah,
we're getting in the weeds as far as very detailed.
right.
Wow.
Wow.
So, I
Wow.
guess the moral of the story I picked up from that is when you're doing the ADLs and outcome assessment tools, make sure that they're just not too genericized. You want them to be specific to your patient. That's
Well,
helpful.
to at least identify deficiencies, right? Specific to
Right.
addressing identified
Right. Because
deficiencies.
like, I just think of then I'm like, oh, cataloging in my mind. What are the typical ones? Like, oh, be able to lift uh, you know, a a basket of laundry. Well, what if they never did laundry? Or I wanna be able to lift my grandchildren. What if they don't have grandchildren? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you put these generic macros in, and sometimes they really don't make sense.
No,
So
and
just be
they know
careful.
that game. See, that's the
Yeah.
thing about the federal government. One thing they have learned is the game. They know the terms better than
Right.
most chiropractors. They know the process better than most chiropractors. They actually know chiropractic better than most chiropractors. So the last thing you want is to be able to have them audit you because unfortunately the process isn't just auditing you for the few records they recommend or I mean they request. They audit you, determine a percentage of error, and if they want to, they can apply that percentage through extrapolation for the past 3 years. So what they're gonna ask for back are not the 4 records they requested. They're gonna ask back money that goes back 3 years for all of the Medicare based on the percentage of error. So if your percentage of error was 20%, they're gonna ask for 20% of all the Medicare money they sent you for the past 3 years. And to some people, that can be significant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So be careful out there, Hopefully, you understand better if you didn't what the AT modifier really means, and dealing with Medicare is something as a chiropractor you can't opt out of completely. You gotta
yeah,
deal with them one way or the other as
yeah,
far as that goes.
yeah, and I think we've had a discussion about that, where we consider that, Hotel California, you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave, and that is Medicare. So so we made it. We got you there to the point where you have to understand the AT modifier. And some takeaways, if you're billing regular visits with an AT modifier, I am going to say 99% chance it's being billed incorrectly because there is no such thing as regular ongoing care under Medicare guidelines.
Well, unlike the Hotel California, there is an end to this podcast, so whether you
Yes,
like it or not.
there we go. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Oh,
again for joining us for another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.